Heat up water in the kettle to about 163 degrees the night before. After that, we combine that hot water with the grain into this vessel. And it looks like a huge batch of oatmeal. And it'll sit in here for an hour. The enzymes will do their work. It'll start breaking down those carbohydrates into very, very simple sugars. And after that process, after that, that enzymatic activity is done, we'll start separating that sugary solution, which is called wort at that time, from the grain bed that's inside of here, and we'll pump it into here. This is the kettle once again. It's just a fancy stock pot on a really big stove. It has a 400,000 BTU burner. That's that green little guy. It shoots a flame in the bottom of that vessel. And what we're going to have is basically a huge stock pot on a big stove. We're going to start boiling up that sugar water. At that time, we cool off what's left over, those husks and bits that are in your mouth that are going to make you guys really want a beer in about 2 minutes. And what we do is we cool that off, we drain that off, and we donate that stuff to Iowa State University for their beef cattle production facility south of town. They get extremely happy cows. It takes about 2.5 hours to bring that up to boil. And after the boiling process begins is when we start adding these things called hops. There's basically 4 main ingredients in beer: barley, malted barley, water, yeast, and hops. Now we've talked about the malted barley, we added water, now we're going to start adding hops. Hops are a little green pine cone. They're from the Humulus, or Cannabinaceae family, or Humulus lupulus is their Latin name. There's some nerd for you. What happens is we start adding hops through the hour-long boil once it reaches boiling temperature. The earlier you add a hop into the hour-long boil, the more bitterness you're going to extract out of it. When you make tea at home, the longer you boil or steep the tea bags, the more tea flavor you're going to get. Conversely, what's going to happen is the later you add the tea or the hop to the boil, you're going to get more aroma or flavor. After the hour-long boil, we'll head back down here, gentlemen. So what will happen is at this point is we'll run it through here. This is a really, really important process. After that hour-long boil, the wort itself is actually at about 212 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll run it through this as a heat exchanger. We'll take cold liquor from the cold liquor tank through a runway. And liquor is just a fancy term in brewing for water. We'll run the hot wort through the other way. And we'll actually, the step we just got done is we just ran off that wort through the heat exchangers. You guys want to follow me back over here? You can actually see the wort right here being pumped bottom side up into this vessel. So we bottom fill this vessel with wort, and then in a little bit we're going to pitch yeast in out of a keg. And this is actually technically when it becomes beer. Now there's 2 styles of beer at this point. There's ales and there's lagers. Now out of all the beers that you see at the grocery store, all those beautiful styles, all that beautiful packaging, there's an amazing amount of stuff. And there's basically 2 processes that come together to make beer. Now there's 2 types of yeast: ale yeast and lager yeast. Ale yeast ferments at about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It ferments really quickly, about 2 to 5 days. And I personally like to have 2 weeks to condition and age it after that before I pump it up to the bar right in our cooler here, and I'll show you that here in a second. Conversely, lager yeast is the other type of yeast. What will happen is in the lagering process is that yeast actually likes colder temperatures. And so you actually ferment it at about 50 degrees. It takes about 3 weeks for it to ferment out completely. And then you lager is the German word for storage, you lager or store that beer for an additional 4 to 6 weeks period.